God is Dog Spelled Backwards, 1963, was conceived of as a concept film. If I took the world's greatest art and combined it with the world's greatest music, Beethoven's Fifth, in theory, I should have the world's greatest film. In this film, every different image, the great art of the world, is shot for just 2 frames, or 1/12 of a second, except the Mona Lisa, the first art in the film, which is shot for 12 frames, or half a second, the world's greatest painting. 1/12 of a second, 2 frames, because there's 24 frames a second in a film. This type of filmmaking became known as kinestasis, which is a very rapid succession of shots of different images, usually 2 to 4 frames an image. It became a very popular way of making films, especially in commercials, montage sequences, and effects. And so God is Dog became the first kinestasis film, and I started the filmmaking called kinestasis. I invented the technique. The film was first shown by accident. It was made in 1963, and then I put it on the shelf. In 1967, I was talking to a student about making a film from a concept, and I showed her God is Dog. Bob Epstein, who was the programming films at UCLA at the time, was in the screening room, and after he saw it, he asked if he could show it with a feature the following week in Royce Hall. And he would pay me $10. I said yes, and it was his first public screening. It was shown with the most depressing film I've ever seen. It was a Swedish film, and the filmmaker killed himself when the film was done. Anyway, God is Dog was a hit, and I started entering it into festivals, and it started winning. And the Perry Como show wanted to use it as a background film, where Perry Como sat on a stool in front of God is Dog and sang. I said no, as I wanted it to be shown as a film in its own right and not as stock footage. Then a couple of months later, the Smothers Brothers, at the time a rather well-known comedy team with a popular nationwide TV show, wanted to show the film all by itself. And the only thing they asked to be changed was to use Mason Williams' music, Classical Gas, as the soundtrack. He was a writer in the show. I said yes, and it was first shown nationwide on the opening of the Smothers Brothers' Glenn Campbell summer show in 1968. They promised me a good spot just before the halfway break in the program, with wild applause and hurrahs from their canned audience recording. Well, the film was a great success, and it was shown 2 more times that summer. The last time I said, just send the money you're going to pay me to the aid for Biafra. The music to the film, Classical Gas, was down in the charts, but the week after the broadcast, it was number 1. In fact, some people think this is the first example of today's music videos, where a film is used to sell a song. The film was so popular that I'm told that one of the Smothers Brothers decided to become a filmmaker by stealing my idea. I've been trying to get in touch with them. I just finished A History of the United States, Star Spangled Banner, and I wanted to show them to it so they could put it on their program. They never got back to me. In fact, they told people who called asking how to get in touch with me that I was a Canadian professor who had gone back to Canada, and they didn't know how to get in touch with me, and they'd be glad to help these people make a film like mine. So the Smothers Brothers, or one of them, hired a student from USC, Chuck somebody, to make a film like God is Dog. And guess what it was about? The history of the United States. They ran it over and over on their show. Other things on the film. The Beatles wanted a copy, and I sent them one. The actual theory behind the film was an experiment in short-term memory retention. How fast can a person see one individual image on the screen? I found that 2 frames was the fastest for different images. At 1 frame each, the images seem to overlap on the optical nerve and give a double exposure. After I got the idea for the film, it was actually made for $25. The cost of 100 feet of ECO, 60 millimeter color reversal film, and the developing and work print. And also I needed a library card to check books out of the local library. It was shot on a 16 millimeter Bolex camera with a 25 millimeter lens, a tripod, and 2 lights. I would check a stack of art books out of the library and then place a table against the wall of my garage, lean a book up against the wall, and frame a shot as I turn the pages, using the other books to hold the one book I was shooting open. Framing was difficult because so much art is in a vertical format, the figurative, and but film is in the horizontal, the landscape format. So I would have to move the camera back and forth until it was framed, and then click off 2 frames. Part of the concept of the film was I would not order the images, just let them come as they did, except that I did have to watch out for repeats of pictures of George Washington and the Mona Lisa, because they were most popular ones in books, and I had to avoid shooting those too many times. The images would be completely random to see what would happen. I think some interesting things occurred. The mosaics, the cave paintings, the street scenes of a French painter. The film lasted 100 feet, the film I shot, 2.5 minutes, the length of 100 feet, 2.5 minutes. And I cut Beethoven's Fifth to it. I started at the beginning with a knocking on the door of eternity, and the music stopped when the film stopped. A distributor for the film didn't like the title, and so retitled it Art. He was a good Christian capitalist, so good in fact. He also wanted the film to be chronological and longer, and so he made it longer in the proper historical sequence, dropped my film, and made all the profits. I just recently got an email from somebody who had seen the film back in the '68 and wanted a copy to show her class. It hasn't been forgotten. Anyway, this should end the commentary on God as Dog spelled backwards.